calling from a 207 area code. You're the final caller of the day. Should you choose to pick up the phone?
I do choose. This is Jamie from the state of ME.
All right, you're trolling me now. You know that I have I have Maine.
It's Maine.
Maine, that is correct.
Thank you. Too many M states.
So I had two things on my mind today, and I'll kind of let you take the reins what you'd like to talk about.
Sure.
Either we have our proto-Trump former governor Paul LePage rearing his ugly mug again in Maine politics, or we have just kind of a weird perspective I've been seeing, like this generational divide when it comes to Kamala Harris.
Why don't you do that second part? I'm interested in your thoughts on that.
Okay. So I am a Gen Zer. I'm 24, and I'm in a District 2 in Maine, which is like the northern part that is very conservative. And I noticed this very weird thing. Obviously, before Biden dropped out, like young people, we were all feeling very despondent about everything. Right. And when he finally dropped out and Harris announced her candidacy, what I immediately noticed, and this is very anecdotal, obviously, is that a lot of other Gen Zers I know were very upset by that and were treating it as if Biden had just handed the election over to Trump, and that was it. It's signed, sealed, delivered. We can't do this. There's no avenue. There's no way to win now for Democrats. While a lot of millennials that I know and was interacting with, they were like championing this, and they were so excited, and were even kind of reviving the banners of like the "I'm with her" slogan, which just I really hope that we don't see more of that. Well, and I would think that
run on that. By the way, I've been pointing out this is where she is running a smart campaign. She's not.
Yes, absolutely.
Not talking about the historic nature. She hasn't mentioned she'd be the first female president. I don't think one time.
Yeah, and so I would just imagine, like, I would have assumed that these like millennials who would have more of a memory of 2016 in the Clinton campaign would actually be super adverse to taking up that language again. And I would have assumed that if anyone, it would be the Zoomers who don't have that memory, who would kind of take up that mantle. And it's just the opposite. And I don't know if that's just says something about kind of Maine being a little backwards in some ways, or like what that means.
So I can't say I've observed what you've observed. So I don't want to say like, oh, it's like small sample size, but it kind of feels like small sample size.
Yeah.
You know?
Are you Gen Z yourself?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Okay. We're all millennials here, so.
Yeah, my sister is Gen Z, so I have a little bit of insight into it. But I mean, it is interesting. Like that's where the TikTok divide is. Like I can't figure out TikTok, but my sister was all over TikTok. Like, but to your point, I don't really see that. But go ahead, Binder.
Yeah, I don't know about like the average like Gen Z person. I can't tell you about this, but I will tell you of the like Gen Z, specifically the Gen Z political influencers. They are not that good. They tend to be pretty like establishment Democrat. Every one of them I've seen when Biden was when the left and others who were dealing with political reality were saying that it would be good for Biden to step down. They were the ones, again, I'm specifically talking about the Gen Z political influencers.
Democrats.
They were the ones
were
the ones championing, no, we got to stick with Biden. Anything else would be a loss. And like, I don't recall there being like a millennial version of that, like back when they were the youngest cohort.
I do gotta say, I think I've seen some of that too, that Bender's seen, but I do want to credit Gen Z for Change, whose different organizers I think bucked that trend, and we're calling not only on Biden being old, but also Biden's Gaza policy.
Yes.
So I do think there are exceptions there, but yeah.
But in terms of the paid people, I mean, you're specifically referring to Olivia Juliana, I think.
There's a few people I'm talking about. You know, those young TikTok guys who the right always goes after, like Harry Sisson or something like that.
Oh,
they're
Well, he's
like,
like a
the ones
centrist
that
guy,
show
though,
up
right?
at the White House and do, but they're front and center. And you know how the right doesn't have a good barometer for what the political spectrum is, and just anyone to the left of them is a Democrat and under the same banner. So these are the guys and girls that that become the political influencers for the Democrats, to everybody else's viewpoint.
Well, I mean, you can't really account for clout chasers, but assuming this is an observable phenomenon, I would probably attribute it to like growing up having Obama be your first president, because Obama was really like the apotheosis of democratic neoliberal politics in this day and age. Like he was a lot of style, a lot of like devout worship amongst a certain type of liberals that I could imagine would be passed down to their children. And then going into the Hillary Clinton election, especially if you were very young, it's probably really hard to remember why she lost, except just to remember like the general shape of what happened. But there were a lot of real misplays from the Hillary Clinton campaign, which it was why she lost. And Biden was able to sidestep a lot of that by nature of there being COVID and people just being tired and more familiar with Trump, because he was no longer an unknown quantity. He had ruled for 4 years and people realized that he was very bad. So I think that trajectory from like Barack Obama to Trump, with the Clinton election happening but not having a full recollection of it, could give rise to what you're describing. I think a lot of millennials remember why Hillary Clinton lost. And so it's easy to be like, well, it's hard to replicate Hillary Clinton's loss. It's really hard to replicate what made Hillary Clinton unpopular. Even if you are another woman, even if you're a woman of color, Hillary Clinton was a very singular candidate that they tried to make indicative of an entire gender. And you can believe that if you want, but Hillary Clinton is a unique candidate. She has a lot of baggage for any politician, even a Democratic one. And so I think if you're just a little older, you remember the Democrats fumbling the ball a lot. You remember the Bush administration is the first president that I really remember, even though I was alive under Clinton. That election was one that I was vaguely aware of, but didn't understand the full, scope of the concerns or what was going on, but had to look back onto it. So I think probably a lot of Gen Zers are just in that space where they remember Obama, they remember growing up under the most articulate president ever, only to switch into Trump, and they don't really understand why that happened. And so you could excuse them being very cagey about anything that might lead to another Trump administration, and also fully not understanding why Clinton lost.
That's a great explanation, I think. Does that make sense to you, caller? And then we'll let you go.
It does. And I do agree that this is like obviously very anecdotal, and I don't think it's indicative of these generations, like any sort of patterns that we'll see emerge. And I'm just hoping so. But something to just kind of look out for. But thanks, guys.
Appreciate the call. Thank you.
Outside of those influencers I mentioned, like the Gen Z activists I know of and are aware of, they're extremely pro-Palestinian. So I can't imagine they were too heartbroken over Biden stepping down.
The most pro-Palestinian generation, like in the sense of have zero freaking problem calling people Zionists, just like, you're a Zionist. Like that being in the lexicon for them is huge.
I think there's more political content out there generally. And so there's probably Gen Zers tapped into political content that we would consider to be very shallow or not very well thought out or kind of divorced from, reality, because political content just became very popular online since the Hillary Clinton administration. So, everyone wants to do it.
Ryan Grimm made this point, and I actually thought it was interesting, like comparing Obama to this movement of how like Obama was kind of the vehicle for everyone's hopes and dreams, and people like would tune into him going after like McCain or Republicans of like he's gonna say like he's the savior, and let's watch him own this person, this Republican in an Aaron Sorkin-esque way, where
he famously did I don't know if you remember this, but he went to like a Republican event and sort of roasted them from the stage there in like 2009 or something like that.
It's the West Wing, but Grimm was making this point of like this is healthier in the sense where people are more just like rooting for Harris to like represent the Democratic agenda and hope that she does well in these settings, as opposed to like pinning, all of like the savior mentality onto
On a
her
heroic individual.
as an individual. Yeah, which I thought was a smart point. All right, let's read some IMs and then we'll get out of here. Buttercup said, apolitical Gen Zers having a negative initial reaction tracks with what I saw. I think they just assumed it was a sign of disaster and Trump will win then. And my old millennial ass had to calm them down a bit. But the existential dread of 2016 still hangs over things.
I saw a lot of millennials saying it would be a surefire way to lose if Biden steps down too.
Yeah, lots of people. I'm still waiting for all the apologies. A lot of people who
still comment quite a lot of heat and still have those tweets up. It's interesting.
It's odd, yeah. I mean, apparently I wanted Trump to win because after the debate, the night after the debate, I said Biden had to drop out.
No, wanting Trump to win is when we say the Holocaust in Gaza should stop. When we said Biden should drop out, that was when we wanted Democrats to win.
Oh, right.
A lot of people are very still shell-shocked from Trump, but they're just Democratic Party partisans, and they don't want to come to terms with the fact that Trump was a beatable candidate in 2016, and they made the wrong moves. He was beatable in 2020, and they still probably would have lost if it wasn't for the pandemic. And he's beatable now. They just have to do the right thing, and that's so hard for them. And a lot of Democratic voters are fatalists. They don't want to admit that they can't move the party to where they want it to be. So instead, everyone else needs to be quiet about every other thing that's wrong with them. It's not a good way to be.
Hi, folks. Hey, you've heard me criticize how the mainstream media across the political spectrum either fails to report on important stories or prioritizes their own bias over balanced and comprehensive news coverage. Well, that's why I use Ground News as a solution on a daily basis. Longtime sponsors gather related news and add important context so you can understand how each outlet reports on it and maybe sometimes skews the facts. This, and being so close to the presidential election, you're going to see rhetoric against Harris and Tim Walz is only going to intensify. So I can't recommend enough that you check out Ground News's election page. My Vantage plan gets me access to their election-focused blind spot feed and diverse perspectives on each candidate so I can find the truth on who they really are, not just hear the loudest, most biased opinions. And areas where, frankly, the left or the right is not covering. For each story you read on their platform, you're going to find article Ground News found reporting on it, as well as tags to the next source indicating if they're independently owned or not, how credible their reporting is, and if they have any political bias one way or another, making it really easy to critically analyze different perspectives and come to your own conclusions. Their mission aligns so much with what we try to do on this show. We try and make you more media literate. So I can't recommend enough going to ground.news/majority or scanning my QR code to subscribe. Ground News is independent and subscriber supported. My viewers, however, will save 40% on the same Vantage plan that I use for unlimited access to all their features on a daily basis. Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.